Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler, and of course, as promised, I am talking about the shenanigans going on in Iran and Israel. They are lobbing attacks at each other continuously now. Off and on. There is time between the attacks. But before I go on, I would like to say, uh, hello. This is the first video I'm uploading to YouTube and Rumble at the same time. Yay. Anyways, back to this. This is a tremendous screw up on everybody involved, alright? I'm sure you've heard, possibilities of war and whatever. Take everything with a grain of salt. It's still extremely early. Everything's in a state of flux. But I will say, I can bring it up here. Where are you hiding? There we are. WTI, July contract. This is oil futures, if you do not know that. It's significantly up. Don't get me wrong. On the If I look on the weekly, it's almost up $10. On the week, about $10. There was a slight buildup when talks started leaking out through the media of Israel being ready to launch an attack, and then the attack happens and bam, spike to quite high up. I'm trying to find the peak here on the graph, and it is not really helpful. Either daily. Let's see if that was the peak. About like 77 something. That is a massive intraday spike on a futures contract on oil specifically. But it leveled off, several dollars below, so there's fear in the markets, but not overwhelming fear because it's not continuing to go up. There seems to be reached a steady state, at least for now. I think the Israelis are probably going to continue making strikes because, as they described it, it's an attack to decapitate the serpent, which is it's regime change by bombs. Haven't really seen this since, well, Gaddafi they tried, sort of, didn't really work. Syria they tried early on. Vietnam they tried. Afghanistan. Okay, it's quite common in the modern day, but it's a dangerous thing. And why it's a dangerous thing is because there were talks going on. Like, there were more talks to go around about the Iranian nuclear enrichment of uranium deal that the President of the United States was negotiating. Or his team was, and what happened there doesn't, or what was going on behind the scenes does matter. What information the president was getting. Because remember, like, Tulsi Gabbard tried to stop this. Was it a week or a couple weeks ago? Oh, Jesus. When she came out and said, definitively, Iran is, like, nowhere close to having nuclear weapons, all right? Remember, Tulsi Gabbard is basically the chief spy for the President of the United States at this point in time. She's what's her title? It's not DNI, is it DCI? Doesn't really matter. All right, and then Hegseth the other day comes out and contradicts that in a very much less It was a contradiction, but it wasn't as strong as, say, Tom Cotton made it out to be. Tom Cotton escalated that to much higher, and whatever. And then you have Trump through Marco Rubio saying, "Oh, we had unilaterally nothing to do with it." At this point, it doesn't matter. The reaction of the United States clearly shows they do not have 100% peaceful intentions, which will backfire for Trump massively in his foreign policy escapades. All right. If he thought that by greenlighting, which may or may not have happened, again, it's leaks through um, mainstream media, so take it with a grain of salt. I mean, just general, this is the fog of war. Take everything with a grain of salt. Filter it through your own to see what makes more sense. Um, as I'm saying, like whether or not the U.S. was trying to stop it or said, yeah, go ahead, doesn't matter. The Iranians, anybody, is never going to trust the United States, never going to trust Donald Trump when it comes to making a peace deal. Because, again, talks were happening this weekend, and they decided to launch this attack. All right? What this proves to the world, and this is the big point, all right? Nuclear non-proliferation is fucking dead, all right? It was severely hurt when the United States used regime change operations to whack the shit out of Gaddafi because he was attempting to acquire nuclear weapons and then stopped. Okay, he made a deal with the United States. Said, yeah, no, sure, we'll stop. That's fine. And then after he was killed. This is now like the second time, and this is a bigger because an actual deal was in the talks. So all of the treaties about nuclear non-proliferation are kind of now just pieces of paper. I mean, there were always kind of were, like, but there was enforcement mechanisms, and and everybody was holding to it because nuclear war is scary and dangerous and very, very bad, obviously. But that's over and done with. Like, the best theory I've heard so far is that Trump allowed this to happen because it would give him leverage with the Iranians so that he could negotiate a better deal. Well, that fucking backfired. There is likely no chance that the Iranians make a reasonable deal. And this is going to explode outwards when I talk about peace deals being made. Like, there is now, after what happened with the Russian attacks, most people were focusing on the bomber attacks, which really don't matter because they do matter because those bombers were out in the open because of nuclear treaties. But it doesn't matter so much because Russia's strategic plans don't resolve around mass bombers. As you can see, if you look up what those bombers are, when they were made, it's like they were made between the 50s and mid 80s. They're not exactly high tech. Meanwhile, like, Russia has constantly updated their MiGs, their rocket artillery, their anti-air defense, their drone programs, but they've kind of, left this in the rear end, not really doing much, just because, the treaties are there, just keep them out. It's not really their strategy. And it was really only a small part of their bomber fleet that was attacked. We're talking like anywhere between 10 and 20. So it's a decent number, but it's not all in. What really matters was the attack on the train that happened simultaneously. That is an overt act of terrorism. And that's much more meaningful. As the Russians were about, again, to have peace deal talks with the Ukrainians. So what that means to me is that everyone in the world that is not on the best terms with the United States or the West in general, now knows that any negotiation with the West or the United States really doesn't mean anything. And you should not really negotiate with them. And you should ramp up your production of nuclear weapons as fast as possible so that you have them and you have a deterrent of some kind. Whether or not that will actually deter, who knows at this point? But that's really bad. I mean, I think now it's clear to the Russians specifically that the way the Ukraine war ends is with them just capturing most of Ukraine. Like, basically everything east of Kiev. That one area, like, from Kiev, Lvov, up into, like, the Polish border there, that will probably be left alone because that's where the crazy Ukrainians live. And by crazy, I mean the Banderites. And if you don't know what a Banderite is, they're neo-Nazis. They're kind of worse than neo-Nazis because Bandera was kicked out from the Nazis for being too fucking crazy and too hardcore. Like, when the Waffen SS locks your ass up for going too far, you're insane. And these people worship him as a hero. So they take Nazism to the very much the extreme, as you can see by the what are they called? I am blanking on the two battalions. They were in Mariupol, Azov and Azar. Those are the two battalions. They were dispersed throughout the Ukrainian army very early on, or at least key positions to basically do what the SS political party did in World War II for the Germans. So I think that there are currently, or there were, talks going on at the Kremlin about upgrading the, what do they call it, the special military operation into something else, which would allow the Russian military to ramp up the war effort in general. Because you have to remember that this is still technically a special military operation for the Russians. It is not full-scale war. It's not an enduring military action. It is something that is supposed to be relatively short and quick. And you can see that by the military tactics they're using, and it is very limited in size and scope. But I would expect them now to escalate that. Not enough to trigger the EU to overreact and get involved, but enough to scare the EU shitless. Not like the EU could ever really get involved. I think now, definitively, peace is off the table until Russia definitively wins that war. Okay? We'll have to continue to see what happens in the Middle East. I think what will most likely happen, if the Iranian regime can survive this, all right? If it stays intact, you will see a proliferation of proxy wars between Iran, Israel, and Western allies in the region through their terrorist proxies that they fund and support. Because really, as far as anybody can really tell, the Iranian military can't do a sustained conflict event, like direct conflict. They could possibly do a defensive action of Iran against Israel if they were to do something stupid like a ground invasion. But like, that's all possibilities, and it's going to be in a state of flux for days, weeks, months to come. Um, this is a monumental screw up for Trump. He was already on the verge. I know it's still a long way away of losing the midterms. Um, if there is a war, or if oil spikes and sustains that spike, he loses the midterms, and in all likelihood, he is impeached, and the Senate votes to convict. And then, you know what? Maybe not, because JD Vance is the next in line, and JD Vance is actually very anti-war as a veteran. Okay, he has on multiple occasions spoken out against any type of conflict with Iran, but more importantly, has spoken multiple times on being basically betrayed by the government with these stupid wars in the Middle East. So, um, maybe not, but they will probably. But then, if the Democrats own, you know, the House, and pick up a couple seats in the Senate, like, they can easily then go after Trump and then Vance and then put their own guy in as Speaker of the House, which will then, third in line of succession. Like, this may destroy Trump's legacy. Now, if this works out in Trump's favor, it will be just insane. I don't think it does. At best, this ends neutrally for Trump, but I think this does come back to bite him in the ass. Like, he ran on no new wars, and his base is pretty strong about that. The American people are pretty fucking strong about on that issue. They have had enough. They are pretty much done. There is being shown in certain report in polling, like I'm thinking of Rasmussen reports, not Rasmussen polling, Rasmussen reports, showing that there is pretty much there's when it comes to no new wars, it's unfavorable. When it comes to war with Iran, it's somewhat favorable. So it could work in his favor, but I doubt it. Again, the oil market right now is saying this isn't going to massively spiral out of control right away, because otherwise, oil would be continuing to go up and up and up and up. But I bet you there'll be some fucking nervous traders trading oil all weekend. There's some interesting things that happened, like the DXY continued to go down. You would think, and treasury yields climbed a little bit, so you would think that people, like big institutions, the guys who move the needles, would be piling into safety and liquidity, and buying dollars, because you kind of need dollars to operate. But I think we're far enough along in the recessionary cycle to the point where there's going to be anything that really happens is going to be, well, we're going to sell our treasury, sell our US bonds, and then sell the dollars and pay off our debt, because we have no fucking clue. We have to deal with our debt load. So that's basically what's going on there, I think. Gold is up, which makes sense. Gold is a riskless asset. Not riskless, risk, pause, less. Very important, because the counterparty risk of gold is so ridiculously low. Yeah, gold's up, and so gold's doing what gold does. A lot of countries are saying, hey, we want peace openly. They're saying that. Canada and our stupidity, Carney comes out and says, "Yep, we're totally ramping up our defense spending," which plays along with him, getting in line with Trump policies. But yeah, I think the worst casualty here is that any nuclear deal that was on the table before this with anybody, like, I think Trump could have come to a deal with North Korea if he really wanted to. Could have, like, there's still negotiations with Russia about nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear treaties that are coming due again. I think they come due next year, maybe. I can't remember. Negotiations with China now are going to be that much more difficult. The calculus for China on treating America as an adversary and doing its terrorist-like, or very much terrorist operations, such as the what was it? It was a virus or a bacteria, something along those lines, that affected North American wheat. It's a novel virus that isn't in North America, or the strain isn't in North America. It's in China. That could wipe out entire crops, or not crops, but entire, wheat harvests. It would just devastate North America, potentially move into South America as well, because bioweapons are dangerous. They are uncontainable. Whatever scientists tell you about that, that is not true. And again, the calculus now of any nation that doesn't like to play ball with the West as a whole is going to start doing the math of, well, if I don't have a nuke, look what they did to Iran. If I start building a nuke, look what they did to Iran. But if I don't have a nuke, look what they could do to me. So I think nuclear proliferation is going to happen in some form. I mean, there's a really good chance. I don't, maybe this ends up being another no big worry type deal. And in a couple weeks, month, it's paved over and no harm, no foul type thing. There's part of me that really thinks, okay, like, if I pull up the freaking oil chart and I go to the year, basically every spike on the WTI contract in the last year is right around when something happened in a war zone that was escalatory in nature to attempt to avert the growing downward pressure of oil because of a recession. All right, if you're going to be conspiracy minded, like something, and it's been like the last couple years, since 2022, when Russia invaded, you had that massive fucking spike, massive downward pressure with a couple of spikes, and each spike was an event, and then you have, that's interesting. Yeah, and then, build up to October 7th. October 7th happens, it starts to build pressure down. I need this graph bigger. Give me the bigger graph. Yeah. Oh no, there was a massive crash before October 7th. And then it starts building pressure afterwards, and then down, and it goes through the oil cycle. But like, basically every sharp spike was something happened. So if you're going to be a little bit conspiracy minded, that's I said this sometime last year. I was like, it's really odd that when oil starts building this really big downward pressure, some shit happens, and then there's a spike. Really weird. Especially with like if you look on the monthly or the year, like OPEC the last couple of years was cutting production, but you can only do that. You can only sustain that for so long, so they had to open the wells back up. But even before they started opening wells, like there was growing downward pressure. And with Trump in and some of his policy, there was really growing downward pressure. And and then there's the tariffs that then spiked, but we were still, if you go to the monthly, there is a very clear, well, maybe not in the monthly, started to spike because, I guess word of this got out, but there was a very good steady state. Anyways, that's my initial take on what's going on. It's very much play it by ear with this and see how things go, because it's still really freaking early. For me, this is I'm about a day into this. For you guys, it'll be 2 days, so there'll be a whole bunch more developments. But again, most important thing, nuclear non-proliferation, done. Deals with the United States, basically done. When it comes to peace, I don't think anybody will trust them for very long, unless they have to. I think there'll be a lot of problems between the United States and China with their trade deal that they're trying to hammer out in the coming days and weeks. I think the Chinese will negotiate tougher than Trump. Tougher than Trump estimates them to attempt to do. But the Chinese really can't do anything. They're basically in civil war in China, and that's interesting. But that'll be the video for today. I will be back on Monday with, I think I had an idea. What the fuck was it again? Here, let me get my notebook. I did really want to talk about libertarians being stupid. Also wanted to talk about economic solutions that the government proposes only ever do one thing, which is interesting but understandable from who their backers are. I also wanted to talk about as ideas or weapons again. I think I did that last year, but it's an interesting topic that more people should talk about. I definitely want to talk about the CPC not doing fucking shit for at least a little bit. I do want to talk about the bond curve and what's going on there again, because it's very interesting and what it actually shows you, what it tells you about the wider world. But we'll see what happens. I think we'll see how bad tomorrow is, Saturday, for me. Because that's probably when I'll record, so it may be just a continuation of this topic, because shit could go really fucking bad. Fuck. This is so fucking stupid. I just want some fucking stability, so that I can make my fucking trades based on what I'm seeing in the background. And because of that I'm so stubborn with my trading. I saw fucking last night a really cheap S&P 500 put contract. Real fucking cheap. It was $742 American for one contract, okay? For betting that in the next week there would be a 3% or something like that pullback. And I was like, okay, I have the data from extremely accurate good traders such as Brent Johnson saying everything's overbought right now. There's likely going to be a pullback. I was like, fuck, should I make this hedge? Should I do it? And by the time I made up my fucking mind, or, well, by the time I saw it and then made up my mind, it was too late to move money because I'd have to pull everything out and then move it. And then by the time everything's fucking moved, it's well into the trading day today for me. So I couldn't take advantage of it, but I saw it. And then I looked at it at the end of trading, which I shouldn't have fucking done, but it was more than double. I'm so fucking pissed that I couldn't. Anyways, that's just me being fucking pissed that I didn't have enough liquid capital to take advantage of a very good position that would have paid off most likely regardless, but it will probably now pay off more, which that kicks me. Feels like a kick to the balls. Anyways, end of the video. Hope you all have a great weekend. It's Father's Day. Hope your father is well, in good health. And hope you have a great time hanging out with him. I will probably end up watching either Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Black Hawk Down, or one of numerous other, maybe spaghetti westerns. We'll do something different. That's it. See you Monday, or maybe see you Sunday with an emergency video. But definitely see you Monday. Till then, have a great weekend.